everyone, Tony Tonkin here. Glad that you could be with me for this particular version of the Tony Tonkin Show. And but this is a particularly different version of what I've normally done in the past because I have a guest with me.
I'm a guest?
Guest, yeah. And you can talk in just a moment. When
it's my turn.
It's your turn and you're on camera. But at the moment you can't, so shut up. So we normally do, so Dee and I normally do a conversation over coffee, and we thought we'd do it through this format today, and then pop it on conversation over coffee. So I guess more importantly, this is the person I'm talking about.
Hi.
So here we are, doing conversations over the Tony Tonkin Show, and who knows how many people will never ever be viewing any of this. But we've got a few things to talk about. So anyway,
I'm the guest. Did you want to introduce me? I'm not a guest in my own home.
well,
but I'm a guest on your show.
You're a guest on my extremely popular and well broadcast podcast. So yes, so welcome, whoever you are.
I'm Dee. Hello. Thanks for having me.
Do you hear everybody saying back to you?
Hi there. I love it when Fran Kelly was saying goodbye this week after 17 years of doing the breakfast show. But I haven't always listened to her, but I'm curious that sometimes the broadcasters come online. I think it might have been Geraldine Doog who says, well, thanks for your company, and I'm really looking forward to your company. And I think, but who's there?
Well, you know, and I like the way they say, thank you for being with me. I'll see you next time. No, you won't.
You don't.
No, on television or radio, you're not going to see
seeing
them.
anybody. Well, no, I know. I do that though. If I read an email about something distressing, I still say, "I'm sorry to hear that," even though I've just read it.
And maybe they should say, "I'm happy that you see me," or happy that you're hearing me.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
Yeah,
anyway,
it's funny.
Anyway.
Sort of thing. That's a strange thing. We weren't going to talk about that.
We weren't going to talk about Fran Kelly leaving RN Breakfast after 17 years.
Yeah, very sad though. Not that I listened to RN Breakfast.
No, I have.
I used to in the past.
I have done. I don't listen to her regularly.
Conversations over coffee. Over coffee.
And I think the last time I listened to her, I have to say there was Barnaby Joyce on, and no offence to Fran Kelly, but that's enough to put anyone off the show, really.
Yeah, well, I hope you haven't eaten before you hear Barnaby Joyce, because you just want to throw up afterwards, you know.
Lots of conversation about whether he's drunk all the time. I'm kind of reluctant to comment on that.
Why not? It's quite easy. Yes, he is drunk.
Do you reckon he is drunk all the time?
Oh, no, I just think he has a personality which makes him look like he's drunk.
Yeah, lots of conversation around that. I don't know how people tell whether it just sounds garbled all the time anyway.
Well, I guess his wave patterns, his brain patterns, are probably incomprehensible. So maybe he just gets confused between what's happening in his brain and when it comes out of his mouth. Or maybe he's just so right wing and so conservative that we just think he's a clown.
Anyway.
At any time, you know.
I'm always reluctant to criticise anybody when they sound a bit garbled, because I can have things come out of my mouth that I didn't intend.
Really? Like, you're a bastard, get out of my house, stuff like that?
No, just words get tangled up and it's like, oh, that's curious.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm reluctant to criticise that, but curious that he's seen as drunk all the time.
Yes, and there's been a lot happening, because we normally do conversations over coffee, which is our podcast. Everybody who's viewing this can go there and hear some of the other crap we've talked about over the years. But there's some other interesting stuff happening this week, isn't there? And
it's been a while.
Very industrious and made some notes.
I have made some notes. Actually, what I was thinking was how safe I feel in my workplace. And the reason why I was thinking about that was because Alec Baldwin on set accidentally killed somebody this week. And there is conversation about that being an industrial accident.
And
because
severely injured somebody else?
So two people. But apparently there had been accidents prior to that and not fully investigated. And also I read that people had actually walked off that work site because they were concerned about the conditions. So apparently it's a very low budget film. So maybe this was just an accident that was inevitable, unfortunately.
Apparently, they have people that specialise in the safety of if you're using munitions, if you're using weapons or whatever on these sets. They have
I would hope so.
Special people that look at the number of people on the set, the directions that these guns and bombs, whatever it is they do, are going to fire, make sure people aren't in range, all that sort of stuff. So they have sort of a health and safety procedure around all of that. In this case, it didn't work.
It wasn't very good. It wasn't very good. And I guess part of the criticism has been that it was low budget, and that was one of the shortcuts that they were making, unfortunately. However,
he produced it. He was producing it.
He was producing it, was it? So he's,
yeah,
in a sense, responsible.
Well, he's the one that would have organised the money and all that sort of stuff. So I guess he was. He must have been responsible for the low budget
and ultimately the lack of oversight, really. So I'm sure that they're all feeling very dreadful about it.
I just thought, my first instinct was, apparently he has a wee bit of a temper.
Oh, does he?
Apparently, so allegedly.
Allegedly,
he has a bit of a temper. And I thought, oh, maybe he just, sort of went off with somebody and thought,
so you thought it might have been deliberate?
Well, I was thinking that maybe he picked up a gun and thought, I'm going to shoot you or something, and then pulled off the trigger and it was loaded. But apparently there are issues around. So I don't know why they use blanks. I thought blanks would have just been, well, obviously they're not proper bullets, are they? Because they haven't got enough gunpowder in them to do whatever they need to do, fly through the air and whatever. So
you're talking to somebody who knows nothing about guns.
Good, you're just the person I need to be speaking to.
You could say anything and I won't know.
No, I was just curious when they talked about blank bullets.
Yeah. Why would they have a...
Because I know from all the post-production work I do in movies, which actually, no, this is fair enough. Using DaVinci Resolve, which I now use, which they use for these major productions, you don't need to fire a gun to get the effect.
You have the noise.
Well, not only that, you can have... I was watching a video where they were showing, they were inserting the flare that happens afterwards. So you shoot a gun and this glow happens.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And they were showing how you just...
I'll take your word for it.
Well, they do. And they were showing how you can, using the software in post-production, just insert that flare. So you can insert the sound, you can insert the flare.
So they don't need anything, they just need the gun voice, nothing in it.
Yeah. Make the sound.
Right, isn't that interesting? Do you think it's because they're American?
I think they have guns everywhere.
Yeah. You would have heard that story about a woman who reckons that the Americans should be coming down here and saving us from our tyrannical government this week.
I think we should go over there and save them from their tyrannical.
No, I think it's too late to save the Americans. I think they're gone. Too late to save the Americans.
Do you think maybe they were gone 300 years ago? Taken this long.
Well, because I think that they've offered a lot in terms of principles and even inventions and have offered a lot, but they've gone a little bit crazy.
What way have they gone crazy for you?
In the last few years. Well, they're very crazy over the gun happy thing, and I don't know why they don't legislate against the guns as the only good thing that I remember John Howard doing is bringing more gun control.
Yeah.
After that mass shooting in Tasmania. But apparently there was quite a lot of backlash in the United States over that. So this freedom, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? I always thought freedom meant also responsibility. And that's how I interpret lockdowns and things like that. We have freedom, but we have some social responsibility, so we're careful towards other people. It seems to me that in that debate in the United States, sometimes that responsibility towards others seems to be missing.
Well, I don't know what I can comment about that though, because they don't seem to...
Huge generalisation. I know there's 350 million of them and they're not all nuts.
And they're not all Nazis or fascists either, and they're not all communists. I mean, it's just that they have this incredible notion around patriotism that just...
that's disturbing.
I don't even know if they know what it means to be... Well, there seems to be so many virgins... I didn't mean virgins. There might be.
There might be.
I don't know.
That's fine.
I don't know.
Yeah,
We haven't done a survey on that recently. But versions, have I said it correctly now, of what it means to be a patriot. And to be a patriot over there is like being, you have to be extremely right-wing, I think. You have to have extreme conservative views about the world. You have to believe in the military. You have to believe in carrying guns. You have to believe in a system which doesn't represent justice and fairness in any way. And you have to be a Trump supporter. And that's kind of it. And
I mean, I guess we're saying that from sitting here, where patriotism isn't a huge thing, even though we do have a Minister for Education wanting us to, I guess, whitewash history quite a bit at the moment. I don't know whether you've seen some of that debate. He thinks that historians are way too critical of Australia because historians
that's the other thing.
Tell the truth.
You can't criticise your background, your history, our indigenous atrocities we can't talk about.
Can't tell the truth, really.
Yeah, as in the United States, they can't talk about African Americans and slavery and all that sort of stuff.
But they do.
But they
do. I guess it's the group that don't want to, and that's the movement that we see a little bit here in Australia as well, where people like Alan Tudge wants us to gloss over that history. And the story this week was that he wanted to gloss over that history in high school because he's concerned that our children won't be patriotic and won't be prepared to go to war. And I'm not seeing him on the front lines if there is any war anyway, so...
Our children won't go to war. Is he
yeah.
planning on a war? They're looking at
China.
China, like that'd be one hell of a war, wouldn't it?
Well, not really.
Right down in 5 seconds. So I think there might be other strategies that could be employed apart from shooting people. Maybe
I hope so.
Maybe
there's still, not with our present government. No, that's not a diplomatic solution at all. I don't think they're an embarrassment to send anyway.
Well, what do you plan to send Scott Morrison over?
To Glasgow.
They plan to send him to Beijing with a gun in his hand. I'm going to take you guys on because you bastards. So I'm going to shoot you all, your whole billion of them or whatever there is.
No, I don't see him as a diplomat. I don't see him in that way. But then we also sent Dan Tien over to Paris to try and calm things down after the stupid submarine. I still don't get why we did that. And he came back empty-handed. I think there's no trade deals. France is still unhappy with us, and fair enough.
We're unhappy. We're unhappy with it, so I can't France be unhappy with it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's a really crazy thing that we're doing there. Well, what else has been happening this week? There seems to be a busy week, really.
If people want to comment, please feel free, and if you want to subscribe to my channel, please. And if you want Dee and I to talk a little bit more on my channel as opposed to just me spouting my shit, let us know down below in the comments.
Oh, instead of just listening to you, have the two of us.
Yeah, look, they'd probably much prefer to listen to you than listen to me.
I'm not sure.
I only get 1 or 2 people anyway, so...
All right, talking about...
This is me and somebody else. Anyway,
what else should we be talking about this week? So in Parliament there was a big fiasco around Christian Porter, so you know that story where he took the ABC to court for slandering him, lost the case, then had to pay his legal fees, and I don't know whether he had to pay any damages to the ABC as well, lost his case, presented it as a win, weirdly enough, or seemed to present it as a win. And then he declared some time ago that he'd received $1 million towards his legal costs, but it's in something called a blind trust. And nobody's talking about, well, it's not been investigated who's contributed that money, which is a bit of a worry, is that people like Gina Reinhardt or Clive Palmer or other, big companies or whatever in Australia, who therefore usually want something in return, is the point. And so, as I understand it, Labor put forward a motion that trust should be investigated by the parliamentary... what's the committee?
What is it, an ethics committee? Or?
No. I think it's called Parliamentary Privileges.
Privileges Committee, yes.
The Privileges Committee.
Believe it or not, yes.
Yeah, to investigate it. And the Speaker, Tony Smith, agreed that there was a prima facie case and that it should go to the Privileges Committee and be investigated, which, as I understand it, is a committee composed of the government politicians anyway, not independent and not opposition politicians.
Yes, that's right.
So it's pro. And that was voted against, and I understand also it was voted against by the government disallowing the crossbenchers to contribute to that vote as well. So, and then this was put forward as some historic event. You probably know more about that than me, as the first time that a speaker's been voted down when he's put forward one of these motions.
Normally the Speaker has a sense of authority over Parliament, and certainly the Speaker's department, if you like, would take these issues to task and would implement an inquiry based on whatever recommendations they get, and normally it just goes through. But in this particular case, he wanted to go through with this inquiry, and the government squashed it.
But so did he want it? Or what does that say? Or did Smith want it because Smith hasn't? Because there was a lot of conversation about whether Smith would then resign for his position, and he hasn't. So was it all just part of the performance?
Well,
in
it's
Parliament?
unlikely. If he resigns, he's been doing the job for quite a while, ever since this government's been in power. So, and he is liberal. So is that part of politics?
Yes, the speakers aren't independent. They do have an independent speaker in South Australia now.
Do they really?
I think so. I think that's just been voted in.
And there has been lots of conversation over the years about having independent speakers that are just appointed by a committee, I guess, that is bipartisan. Have a pool of people that could be eligible to be speakers.
It does seem crazy to me to have somebody from the government in that role. Actually,
it does take a voter, because he has a casting vote, but where there's a tie. But it does take a vote out of most parliamentary voting procedures. So, but anyway, so what's he decided in the end? To do nothing. To do nothing.
So kind of nothing's happened, which raises a point for me, because somebody today on Twitter wrote a letter to the Governor-General and said, hey, come on, can't you do something about this government? But you say we can't do anything about this government except wait for an election. And it seems to me the government seems to have gotten worse and worse, really. There's no accountability.
Well, the only time that the Governor-General, when Fraser went to the government about Whitlam, so... and that was full of controversy,
yes,
obviously. But and that's only when a government, when a party cannot form government. That would be the only reason, which was the case with Whitlam, because the Liberal Party had a majority. So and Whitlam still wanted to govern, and that wasn't feasible. So the only time a Governor-General can step in is when there's a constitutional crisis, basically. And so
we have at least until May.
Joe Bloggs from the Sticks can come in and recommend that. I mean, well, what makes you think he can do that? You can't do that. Unless we have a January the 6th version over here where people rush Canberra.
Which is not going to happen.
I mean, not many Australians are that, although we've discussed about that, but how many Australians are actually
Yes, you said
politics?
It's not very many.
I think it's bugger all.
It's not very many, yes. It's interesting. Well, it is interesting. I'm not sure. So again, I'm kind of in a little bubble. I'm in my own little university bubble where we talk about gender issues and race issues and whatever, and then I'm in my other little Twitter bubble. So I'm not really connected.
However, a lot of bubbles actually. It's like having a bubble bath every day.
I'm in my little bubble. But it's a good segue into, because that's something that Prue Garwood said this week, is that...
favourite person.
You're my favourite person at the moment. I haven't ever attacked her.
Oh, you haven't?
I've written to her. Oh no,
So
the
you've never
worst
said
thing.
anything disparaging
No,
to
no. The worst thing
Bridget?
I said was, oh no, I did say she was an appalling woman and she should be chased out of town.
So
Is
in
that
other words,
attacking?
these versions of attacking is to tell someone that they're shit. But that's
No,
not
I
attacking.
didn't use that language.
No, you didn't have to use that language. You said the same thing.
I thought she was
You
appalling.
were politer about it. That was
I thought she was appalling. She did talk about people who, she calls them the proletariat, and then later on she says she's done a Marxist analysis, and I can tell you that Marx did not call what she also calls the underclass, he did not call them the proletariat. He had a great deal of respect for the proletariat, the working class.
I had to look that up.
You had to look that up?
I thought that was someone who was all for proletariats.
And proles, she calls...
Proles? What are...
well, short for proletariats.
Oh, right.
So proletariat apparently can be seen as derogatory. Marx never saw it as derogatory. He was on the side of the working class and saw them as capable of formulating and fomenting a revolution. She says she's talking about the proletariat. I think she's talking about what he calls disparagingly the lumpen proletariat, so not the working class, people who aren't, for whatever reason, working. And she reckons that they don't vote. But you're saying more broadly than just one segment of the community. But she also said some terrible things like they're damaged, they're lacking in trust and discipline, and they're highly
she's talking about the Liberal Party.
Yeah, I know. So this is how she starts off. They're damaged, lacking in trust and discipline, and highly self-interested. And there is a woman called Rose Jackson who says, no, she's not talking about politicians.
She's talking about Gladysborough Dickian
That's right.
and Gowan and McGowan and all those other dudes that are involved in this inquiry.
No, she's talking about people who don't have very much money, who she says are a major cost centre for government, costs something like $1 billion or something like that.
Oh yeah, well, I wonder how much all her colleagues, all the politicians, and all those people cost on their $200,000+ salary each,
and their pensions.
How many hundreds of, and that's not just those in federal politics.
And they have two children.
Yeah, one bloke's just having his 7th, they tell me.
Oh no, not him.
His wife is.
Yeah, no, Dominic. It's okay for Dominic to have 7 children, but not if you're a poor person.
Doesn't his name? Don't you reckon his name sounds like a very expensive French water?
French wine, Perrier.
No, water, isn't it Perrier or something?
Oh, Perrier. Oh, yeah, with water with bubbles.
Yeah, water with bubbles.
Premier with bubbles.
Yeah, so.
Oh, he's in a bubble land too.
Well, that's right.
I'm in bubble land.
Perrier, that's the most. I find it's the most fascinating name. I don't know whether it sounds like parrot.
I'm probably never going to be able to spell it first off right.
Or parrot.
Parrot.
Like, like a tot, like a baby.
Oh.
Haven't thought of that one?
No.
I just thought of it then. How clever of me.
No, I think you're talking about politicians again.
Oh, yeah.
Toddlers.
Right. Toddlers. Yeah. I haven't made up my mind about him. Do you want to sidetrack to him for a moment? Or?
Oh, I'm happy to sidetrack. Oh, no, I'm happy to not make up my mind about him. And besides which, that's New South Wales politics, so...
Yeah. And we've got the coronavirus to talk about and other shit, I guess, too, if we wanted to.
Yeah.
Yes, I think I think it's fascinating how... So we know he's extremely right-wing, which means that he's interested... He couldn't give a shit about people on welfare and the underclass and... so his focus. The
people that Prue Garwood was talking about and pretending that she likes.
So his thing is about getting the great state of New South Wales back on track, because they're just absolutely amazing, and they keep the rest of the country going too. There's people from New South Wales.
Oh.
Not that we should complain about that.
I'm not complaining about that.
Our son and our future daughter.
And I don't like that sort of state competition. It's a bit silly.
It's relevant when you talk about football. and Victoria, because we in South Australia have to hate Victorians because that's just the way life is.
But I'm not into football, so I don't have to hate anyone.
No, you don't have to be a party to
I don't have to be.
Revolution that we're creating here in South Australia against Victoria, because it's been there a long time. It's part of our DNA if we're South Australian, that we have to hate Victorians. Yes, so anyway...
In actual fact, the conversation...
Bubbly water, as he now might be known.
because I've got a segue. Anyway, you talk about Dominic.
Well, I just think that everything is right-wing, Everything is about this. Everything must get back to. So there's this whole focus on opening up, which is fine. I accept.
I don't have a problem with that.
They need. Not do I. But it's. I get the impression that very little would be. That very little consideration would be given to those people who actually have struggled through this. The people that either are on low incomes or no incomes at all. Kids and their mental well-being and education and how that's suffered. So there's never been any conversations about any of that. It's all about opening up and getting the economy going. But I think there are lots of other people that have been damaged through the virus and the lockdowns in New South Wales and Victoria. And just the fear element, I don't think I'd like to be wandering around. I wouldn't want to be wandering around in Victoria right at the moment. They're way out of control. But I wouldn't like to be wandering around in those states either, in New South Wales either, because they haven't actually got control of the virus. I mean,
even though the numbers are coming down, and the vaccination numbers are good.
In fact, Victoria's stabilised at over 2,000 a day now, and the number of deaths in Victoria yesterday were horrific. They were like 16 or something, the highest number we've ever had in one day. And I thought I've got to add the Victorian number into that. Sorry, the Queensland number. I'll say it again. New South Wales number into that as well. I guess there are just states I just don't want to be in.
Right now, because of the health, not because of the state necessarily, but because of the health situation.
Yeah.
It's not really good. Normally, who's the Premier? I don't even know when I travel to those states. As you've said before, suddenly we do know who's in power in each state, only because the states have been managing the COVID situation compared to what the Prime Minister's been done. I guess what I did kind of like Perrottet's cheekiness in saying that the borders were going to open up, and he put Scott Morrison on the back foot in saying that, so that Morrison had to come out and say, no, that's a federal issue, not a state one. So I kind of like that little bit of tussle between the two of them.
Well, it's nice to know that if you're in the party, you could be hated by another Liberal.
Yeah, well, yeah.
That's what I say.
Yeah, but in terms of other states, what's been interesting for me is watching the conversation on Twitter, because I don't read the Murdoch Press. I don't really read much of The Age or the Sydney Morning Herald anyway. But so I've relied on a conversation on Twitter to tell me that when it comes to criticising the border closures, usually it's Queensland and Western Australia that gets picked on, and there's no mention of South Australia and Tasmania. And we've had our borders closed to Sydney, or to New South Wales and to Victoria for quite a long time, same as the other states. And usually it's, and more often than not, it seems like Anastasia Palaszczuk gets a bashing in the press for that. But somebody's actually done a quantification of the ABC, so not the Murdoch Press, not the Nine Press or whatever, but the ABC, Hayden O'Connor from the Independent Australian. And he's gone through just 20 days in October, and he reckons there's a clear bias in presenting ABC news articles, but also on the 7:30 report, in their coverage about the border closures. So South Australia is barely ever mentioned, and when we are mentioned, we're not criticised for those borders, and it is usually Western Australia and so the Liberal states. Oh, sorry, the Liberal states don't get a look in. We don't get a look in.
When was the last time we had any international media mentioned the fact that we don't have any COVID here?
I don't know. You'd have to look through the papers.
Well,
ask somebody like Hayden O'Connor, who's on top of that.
You can just ask me.
You reckon we haven't?
I don't think there's been any comment for weeks about how we're doing about it, but there's comments about Gunner and
in Northern Territory.
Sorry, not Gunner. McGowan in WA about them not opening up, because the reality is that in Western Australia they think they're a country already, so they don't really give a damn about the rest of us. But they but that's the only. But it's when they offer So they'll offer criticism of the Labor states. That's really
yes,
what you're saying.
That's the point that I'm making.
Don't make any comment about the liberal states as well.
And I guess the other point that I'm making is that the conversation I saw has been validated by quantification. So it's actually been quantified by somebody. So that was because I very rarely watch the 7:30 report. I do see the media articles, but I haven't sat down and analysed them. So in terms of this sort of state competition, it is that liberal bashing, and it always raises for me the question: do the people who do that sort of biased reporting, do they think we're all stupid and don't notice, or are they so stupid they don't notice?
I don't think they notice their biases.
So they're so stupid they don't notice their bias. That would have to be stupidity.
Do you notice your biases?
Yeah, well, I guess when somebody calls them to my attention.
Don't you? No, that's not the point. The point is you're supposed to notice them anyway.
Well, yeah.
I know what my biases are.
I think so.
I think. You know, I know that I'm anti-conservatism. You know, I know the way I think. And I know that.
But you don't. So you also. So if you were a reporter, you would know that. So you are you telling me that you're a reporter?
If I'm a reporter, I should be reporting facts.
Yes.
But I should be conscious of my biases.
That's
right.
That
they're not interfering with the facts that I'm reporting.
Yes, but what I'm saying is that there is clear evidence, at least for the ABC, of bias against the Labor states. And are those reporters, or are they being instructed anyway? So are those reporters not noticing that they're putting... Lee Sales was... Hayden O'Connor hasn't mentioned Lee Sales. He mentions the 7:30 report. But certainly Lee Sales has gotten a lot of criticism.
And who wrote the report on this? Who wrote this report that you're referring to?
This is somebody called Hayden O'Connor.
Well, how do you know what their biases are?
Well, are you saying it's not bias? Or does it just agree with my bias?
well, does it? Yes, that's the point. So we think...
No, you can't quantify.
So why isn't this person... Well, this reporting could be extremely biased.
What, biased in favour of fair reporting?
I think that's a bias we need to start to consider.
I think it's a bias we could start
with. The truth will define a bias. You know, if you're telling the truth, clearly you have a bias towards truthfulness. And that could be a problem if you're a Donald Trump of this world and a liar. So, yeah.
Yeah, true.
So, did you have anything else you want to talk about now?
The only other thing is, have you heard about the new strategy was reported on Thursday? Apparently we now have a national strategy for the prevention of child sexual abuse.
Yes, I did.
And there is a centre going to be set up.
And it's not coming out until next week.
The details?
The details.
The details are not coming out, yes.
So I did do that, and I looked it up when I heard that, and that's how I know it's not coming out until next week. Plus, the fact that there's been a framework around child protection since the year dot, or for at least the last 10 years, I guess, which is the most toothless, ineffective frigging thing I've ever seen. I don't know why it is that... So the way it strikes me is that they must be doing something. The government must always appear to be doing something that is affecting or impacting or making a comment around child protection.
Oh, isn't it just another announcement like the submarines?
Well, I think that they're going to put more money into
it. There is apparently a commitment of at least $22 million towards a centre for...
So academics, people like yourself, in fact...
So we sit around and research endlessly and nobody takes any notice of it.
It's a bit like the one here in South Australia.
The Centre for Child
Protection is an absolute waste
You
of money.
raised an interesting point. So two things I wanted to say. One was my surprise that Grace Tame knew nothing about this initiative.
Or wasn't included in the conversation.
Wasn't included in the conversation. So she was told about it through the media. So that's one thing. And then when I saw on the television, remembering it, take into account the way things are framed, and I was wondering why Stephen Marshall was hovering in the background. But anyway, he said something about we need to disagree respectfully in Australia. And I wondered whether he was criticising her for some of her critique of him, which I've never seen as disrespectful, but very pointed. And whether that's why, whether she was excluded because she has dared to criticise, for example, that forum for women.
No, I think, I kind of agree with the saying. I think there's another take on that though, and that is that we don't include stakeholders in these decisions.
Well, he's reported to have said that they will be included.
Well, why wasn't she included?
Exactly. I think she's
the key stakeholder.
No, I think she's being...
Not a key stakeholder, but an important stakeholder.
I think she's being punished for criticising.
Yeah, so,
that's right.
Okay,
so he's just doing his bullying thing.
So if that is a dick, am I allowed to say that on your
No, I don't think so.
Can I?
No, it's a silly word.
Is it?
Yeah.
Penis?
It doesn't sound quite
a pathetic correction?
Pathetic individual. I'm okay with that.
I could work on a few saying. What was I going to say? I think that they, but that's the whole point. So if you're a stakeholder and this is my experience with the Child Protection Party. So if you're a stakeholder and you're critical of the department,
you'll get cut out.
So people within the department, because the department's just full of people. They'll find ways to try and silence you because you're not allowed to be critical.
And I think that was what he was doing.
So even the stakeholders' responses, no matter what they are, they might go and have a chat. I don't know who the stakeholders they think are. I don't know who they're going to ask. They certainly never ask us for the Child Protection Party, that's for sure. But they, so who are they going to ask? And if those people are critical, are they going to take the critique on? Or do they just shelve that? Because that's what they always do, time and time again. Even if you look at the inquiries, not an inquiry, or the other 40-odd inquiries that we've had, any criticism is ignored.
Well, they'll just take out the recommendations that are easy to implement, like setting up, or cheap, like setting up memorials. But you raise an interesting point.
Yes, setting up memorials.
Why would we need a centre for the prevention of child sexual abuse when we have child protection agencies right across the country? What have they been doing? Not preventing child sexual abuse?
Well, is the government... Well, I don't know, because I don't know what in the hell this is supposed to look like.
Oh, you don't think it's just another announcement like the submarines?
Well,
it might happen sooner.
Well, the submarines really was about trying to mark a boat that sinks, for Christ's sake. So I think the child protection thing is about marketing a policy around child protection, which will just sink like all the other policies around child protection. But I don't think it's going to have... Anyway, I think we need to be fair, I guess we need to wait and see what the announcement is next week and see what happens.
To see the details. So we've only seen that it's an announcement at this point.
Yeah, that's all we know.
All right. Well, that's very dispiriting, because you do wonder, though, what has been done. It's not like this is a new issue. We've known about this, child sexual abuse for a very long time now. Why is it taking so long? And
we have a commissioner on children, which is Megan, whatever her name is, and very rarely do we hear about her. So we need. I actually think they ought to make me the commissioner for children. I do. I think we need to put. Could I have those 5 people that are watching this? Could you please?
There's 5.
We've increased our numbers by 5. Could you please contact the government and say that you want Tony Tonkin to be the commissioner on children, because I would stick it up their arse big time.
All right.
Because I think that's the thing. I don't think we have enough passion to hear the people's stories like we do at Child Protection Party, to advocate for... See, it's not about advocating for a system to change. It's also about advocating for individuals to point out the system that is unhelpful to them, and for those individuals to have some changes happen in their life. Parents that don't have kids, to have at least a system that looks at what is happening for you, how that is for you and for your children, and returning kids where necessary. So the whole system's...
Well, that's different anyway. I guess that's different. That's
different issue.
Certainly in terms of who violates children, that's much wider than the people who are caught up in the child protection system.
Well, much wider.
It's much wider.
The point is, the wider it gets, more and more people that can work to have their children back get caught up in that system. It becomes a web that then captures. So the people that are really horrible and commit heinous crimes against children somehow often don't get caught in that net. In that net, it picks up all these other people that certainly might have neglect issues, DV, mental health and so on, and drug issues, but they don't. But the people that are really doing the bad shit, I reckon...
Like the priests.
Yeah. They get away with it.
They get away with it. Well, yeah.
You know? Okay, is that it?
That's it.
Wow, thanks everybody for being with us.
We might as well finish on your call to be Commissioner for Children in Australia.
I think so. Put my name forward and nothing will happen. So, thanks everybody for being with us. Thanks, Dee. That was a good conversation.
Thanks, see ya.
It's gone for far too long. About 40 minutes, which isn't bad. That people will turn off after 5, so not hear what we're talking about now. And I just want to say to people, please subscribe, ring the bell to get future notifications, and perhaps Dee and I will have more of these conversations later. So thanks everybody, take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.